Auston Matthews just signed a new contract extension with the Toronto Maple Leafs, which will now make him the highest paid player in the entire NHL. But this isn't just big news for hockey, but it's huge news for the Leafs, and it changes their future completely. But what is next for this Leafs team? What could we see in the future for them? What happens now with William Nylander and Mitch Marner in the future as well? But watch till the end for all the trade rumors, all the hockey talk. And make sure you hit that subscribe button for more hockey videos just like this all throughout the year. You won't want to miss a thing. Now, Auston Matthews was going to be a UFA after this next season, making $11.6 million, and we most likely knew a deal was going to get done, but there was some rumblings that he could go somewhere else in free agency. There was a lot of rumors about the LA Kings specifically, and of course all the joke memes about the Arizona Coyotes, but he ends up signing a monster deal with the Leafs here, folks. 4 years, $13.25 million for a total of $53 million throughout the deal. And what's interesting here is again that term where he already signed on a pretty low term in his last deal at 11.6, and he signs for another lower term at 4 years. With a lot of players signing those longer term deals, Matthews has made sure to keep his options open. Now, Frank Savelli has some interesting notes here. Auston Matthews' career earnings will be $114 million before his 31st birthday. I mean, I'd be lucky if I can get to $1 million by that point in my career. But it goes on to say, Matthews' camp was not willing to go beyond 4 years on the contract, and the Leafs pushed for longer. Now, this makes sense from both sides. For the Leafs, obviously pushing for longer, I believe that they'd want to have Matthews as long as possible. That's just a general assumption of mine. It's a hot take, I know. But Matthews' camp only going 4 years and staying on that mark, which is interesting because, again, this next deal will be over when he's 31 years old, which is in a weird position free agency wise, where it's not really past his prime completely, but most likely he'll be on the tail end of his career, which going into free agency, if he does choose to leave Toronto, is kind of in a weird position in his career. He'll still likely get paid the most, and it'll be the biggest contract of his career because the cap likely going up and everything, but it makes it interesting towards that next deal and what we see there. I do think for Matthews, though, keeping his options open is definitely the best thing here. And if the Leafs don't have any success, if he doesn't have any success in Toronto these next few years, you could absolutely just leave after that. But it makes things interesting for Toronto and makes things a lot more complicated and stressful, especially leading up to that next deal in 4 years' time. Now, here's where we get into the Leafs side of things, because there actually might be the case we made that this is a good thing for Toronto. Of course, being at the end of it at 31 years old, you're likely in the last couple of years of elite production, especially if you're in a Matthews sense, where even though I think he'll still age pretty well because of his play style, I do feel like you're not going to be getting the elite seasons out of Matthews after this next season. So for the Leafs, if there's a situation where there still isn't any success, still isn't nothing, they could absolutely just let him go after these 4 years and not have to pay the insane amount that he likely will ask on his next contract. For the Leafs, these next 4 years are obviously locked in as the most important, like the last 5 years were with that last contract, but it makes things even more stressful for them. That being said, though, they don't have to pay him massive amounts of money for years 34 or years 35 that likely won't see as many results as he did before. But because of the lesser term and the higher AAV, that makes things incredibly complicated for this Leafs team that already was so cap strapped, already paying Matthews 11.6, and even though there could be some points where he's worth this new contract, it also makes, again, Toronto's cap situation even more stressful than it already was. But you look at the Leafs cap friendly right now, and you see everything else besides Matthews, and it's really kind of all over the place. You only have one player signed for more than 3 years in David Kampf, and you got John Tavares, Mitch Marner signed for 2 more years. Marner specifically will be fascinating because his contract is up in 2 seasons at a $10.9 million cap hit. With Matthews getting a pretty big raise, Marner is also probably going to want that too. I would assume at least getting past the 11 million mark. If the cap is rising, Marner's going to ask for a lot more because Matthews asked for a lot more and got it, and that's going to also create some more cap complications further down the line. Not to mention, of course, William Nylander, who he's talked about a ton, right now making $6.9 million, will be a UFA after this next year. The Leafs are already so cap strapped and already weren't looking like they were going to re-sign William Nylander. This to me makes it even more obvious that might not happen. Now, from what we've heard with Toronto, it seems like they'll just ride out this William Nylander contract, try to keep him as long as possible, maybe sign him to a 1 year deal or something, but it seems very unlikely that they're going to be able to sign William Nylander long-term to what he wants. Likely, again, a player that's worth around 8 around $9 million. This is a player that's been one of the most productive wingers, one of the most productive forwards in the league over these last couple of seasons, back-to-back 80-plus point campaigns, and Nylander is going to get paid, whether it's with the Leafs or not. But this is a Leafs team that has had such a big part with Nylander over the last few years. I don't know if they're going to be able to pay him what he needs, what he deserves, and that is a huge loss for a Leafs team that already on that top six needed more juice, and likely will be without it next year. But that's the reason this team is in such a weird place, especially when you consider contracts like John Tavares, who have that 1 year left at $11 million, just absolutely brutal timing, because if Tavares' deal was up after this next year, we wouldn't be talking about this most likely. He'd probably get around a decrease in money, maybe around $3 million, maybe around $4 even, maybe down to $7 million, honestly, especially considering his captaincy. He might want to take that pay cut too. But after he signed with $11 million, who the heck knows if that would have happened. But you have that extra year, and that to me is especially brutal in the William Nylander negotiations, because that makes it just incredibly impossible to actually make it happen. When you look at the rest of the roster, you got players that'll be coming off their deals like Brody, like Klingberg, but it's just a lot to have to deal with, and especially if you want to keep a lot of the depth you have, Nylander just isn't going to stick around, especially at the cap he wants. If we're talking about $8 million, if we're talking about in that range, Nylander is going to get that type of money, but certainly not with Toronto. I could see a team like Chicago or a team like the Anaheim Ducks giving it to him, a team that would want some juice on the wings on that top six, specifically Chicago on that right side. Imagine Nylander with Bedard and Hall. That would be amazing to see, and you could switch him and Reichel's place within the lineup and give Reichel a little bit of fluff, maybe on that second line to really do damage. But Nylander would be an amazing fit there, especially along Bedard would play perfectly. And to me, I could see a situation where Nylander gets that big payday, gets that big money, gets that long-term deal. But as of right now, it doesn't seem like Toronto's going to be the team to do that. But what I do think is interesting about Matthews' deal is, especially in this era of players, again, signing for as long as humanly possible, Matthews right now signing for 5 years, 4 years is actually pretty unheard of, even if it doesn't really seem all that crazy. I mean, he signed for 9 years total with these two contracts. So it really added up to still a lot of term here, but it gave Matthews flexibility. It gave him the opportunity to ask for 13.25, but also gave him the opportunity to kind of strangle Toronto a little bit. And to me, for Matthews specifically, it's amazing for him. I mean, even though it does take him up to 31, I still think this is the type of deal that he can get a lot of money afterwards, still prove himself quite a bit, and still get a big payday afterwards too. And maybe we start to see more superstars. Maybe we start to see more top-level players asking for lower-term, high AAVs, trying to increase your options as much as possible. I mean, if you know that you're not going to be injured, then that's the way to go. If you know your worth, that is the way to go. That's how you create value for yourself. Matthews has done that and has increasingly gotten payday after payday every single year because of it. Now, when we look at other superstars who could maybe replicate that same strategy with Matthews and could go down the same path, let's actually go here to the Edmonton Oilers, who look pretty interesting here, because with McDavid, he signed at $12.5 million for the next 3 seasons, and of course the Oilers can discuss a contract extension with him right in 2025, so that should be interesting. But let's be honest, Connor McDavid isn't going to do that. He's going to take a team-friendly deal because he's Connor McDavid. The one I'm going to be really looking at here, though, is Leon Draisaitl, who makes $8.5 million and has turned into one of the best deals in the NHL. Of course, the Oilers will be able to potentially extend him as soon as the 2024-25 season. So I think Draisaitl is in a really unique position after taking a pretty long-term deal on his first big deal with the Oilers. To me, I think he's in a perfect position to take a similar deal to Auston Matthews, likely get paid more than Connor McDavid, around that $13 million, maybe even more. I mean, Draisaitl has the case made that he could be better than Matthews in different ways, could be worth more. We'll see what happens, though. I feel like with Draisaitl, even though I don't quite agree in some of those arguments, he could be a player that gets paid mega dollars. And especially with maybe the lower term, could again, around maybe that 30, 31 years of age, go back into free agency or get a mega long-term deal with the Oilers then. That's what I think we're kind of seeing maybe, and Draisaitl, I think, is a perfect scenario to see that play out again, just like it has with Auston Matthews here. And I think with Matthews, it's kind of perfect because he's signed now for the 9 years, these last 2 contracts, and it kind of gives the illusion that he might leave and kind of puts the stress on the team to sign him to get the deal done. And it's kind of perfect if you're Matthews. You get a huge couple of deals, you still sign for all these years and still have all this term with these couple of deals, you get paid monster money because of the stress you put your team under. I mean, it's not team friendly at all, but I would not be surprised to see more players go after this, especially players that aren't very injury prone either. If you aren't scared of that, I think a lot of superstars will go Matthews way. Let me know down below, am I out to lunch? Will we see other superstars go the Auston Matthews route? I want to know your thoughts down below. Of course, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell if you haven't already. And of course, share the video with all the hockey fans you guys know online. Click this card for all my hockey talk right in one playlist. My name is Nathan. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day, and goodbye.